about your experience with dual diagnosis?
Well, I realized after about a year of sobriety or so that I wasn't getting things out of being sober that other people were. And I was doing all the same work, and it just was real discouraging until I was diagnosed with depression and attention deficit disorder, and I was able to work on that. And on the other side of that, I've been able to work with dual diagnosis patients recently, and I have a different perspective, whereas I have a little more empathy and a little more understanding of what they're going through, and you know, how they're feeling less than because they're not getting out of recovery, what they see other people getting out of recovery. And I can draw on that and tell them, hey, you know, it's just because of this, and you just need to work through this too.
So your history with your own struggle has really been a help to you as a counselor?
Yeah, what started as a curse has turned out to be a blessing in disguise.
Welcome back. And welcome back to you, ladies. I know when we first took our break, right before the break, I had mentioned this idea of why there's more dual diagnosis. And what was interesting to me about the person who just spoke is that, in fact, it only took him a year to go and get a diagnosis. So, you know, at some level, perhaps there has become more awareness that that's a possibility. Why do you think we're seeing more dual diagnosis clients at this point?
Well, you should probably answer because you've been in the business longer, and it's a trend.
Well, I think that clearly we're not seeing more people who are dually diagnosed, but we're more aware of the problem. And one of the things that has drawn our attention to the problem is the kinds of relapse that we see in the recovering community, the kinds of decompensations that we see in the psychiatric community, and our struggle to learn more and understand more about both populations. And because we're trying desperately to find ways to relieve the difficulties and the struggles of our clients, we're finding that that integration is a necessary component in their treatment.
Okay.
So we're trying to find answers, so we're understanding how it works.
Okay.
I think there's a couple more reasons, one being the move to case management across the state results in more intensive work, more attention to clients, more involvement in all parts of their lives, and it's going to come up.
Yeah, so the more holistic the treatment, the more you're going to recognize this other area.
Yeah.
The other thing, as I mentioned, and I don't know real well the history, but I know that dual diagnosis is an issue that comes up every so often. I know I've met people over the years who say, this is great, you know, 5 years ago I really tried to push this, we tried to do that. So I know it comes up. I also know that there was some problems with some insurance companies in the past where they were labeling anything that walked basically dual diagnosis.
Right.
So we've got that record, so to speak, to go get beyond. I do know that the statistics that we're hearing now, that roughly 60% of our population that we're seeing is dually diagnosed in the mental health field, is the public percentage, or how do you say it, our public clients, not in the private with private insurance, but the patients in the public sector. So it's a bigger figure in the public sector.
Okay.
Which we are primarily working in now.
Yeah, well, and I know that studies done by different mental health organizations of the different major mental disorders do show a very high correlation between the abuse, if not addiction, of chemical dependency and anxiety, phobias, depression, things like that, schizophrenia. Let's take a look at our next graphic and get some more insight about this. Abstinence from alcohol and other drugs requires acknowledgement of the need to take medication if necessary and medication compliance. If my mental illness is not addressed, I will be more likely to self-medicate with my drug of choice. This thought brings up an important issue, which I'm sure has been much discussed in your network, which has to do with the role of medication. Traditional chemical dependency treatment has been, you know, don't take nothing, never. And so the idea of being able to work with chemical dependency programs, maybe becoming more accepting of medication. What's happening with that?
Well, from my perspective, it was a balance between whatever works and I lost my thought.
And not taking medication ever?
Right. Whatever works is certainly, there's medication in some situations where nothing's going to happen unless you have medication.
Right.
And we've seen the people in the dual diagnosis network who are coming in saying, no matter what this person does, they relapse year after year after year. There's got to be something else. So almost by default, there's been an acceptance more and more medication. But certainly, anybody running a program or working with a dual diagnosed is very well versed in what medications are addictive and what medications aren't.
But I think that the other problem that goes along with that is that as we go into the traditional recovery community and educate them about the need of medication, they're accepting that and they're finding ways to integrate the medication. But the thing that's unique about the community of the dually diagnosed is that there is a different treatment approach necessary to help them, in addition to the need for medication for their psychiatric problems, and that you can't be as confrontive, you cannot be as demanding and intrusive and push for the emotional component the way that traditional chemical dependency programs do. So if you get somebody into a program and you medicate them and you get that degree of cooperation, but you provide the same program, you're going to run into other problems too.
Okay, so that maybe for some of these clients, their fragility or kind of the pain they've experienced in their life means that confronting could possibly make them worse.
Right.
If not better. But where, you know, that, and I know that's one of the biases in traditional chemical dependency about mental health, which is, you know, I know on psych units, I used to work on a chemical dependency unit, and I'd go down to the mental health to do screenings and intakes, and the mental health groups are always more flowing in and out. I mean, clients could actually get up and leave group and come back, and there was almost no confrontation. I mean, it was a real split between the two. So I think part of the fear of the chemical dependency treatment program, when someone says something like that, is, what does that mean? Does that mean my clients get to write their own treatment plan, that they get to do whatever they want? I mean, and I think that speaks to the education you're talking about.
Right.
You know?
Right. And the need for programs that are really addressing the dually diagnosed, that we're not just slipping people in and out of each other's kinds of programs, but that the program is addressed for that community. And there are specific needs that you need to be sensitive to when you do that.
Like what?
Well, particularly as we're talking about the confrontational approach. The people who are struggling with a mental illness and a chemical dependency need to be given a lot of support, need to be guided through the process. They might need levels of education and information and structure that you might not have to give somebody who is just chemically dependent. And they're given a whole set of different tools than somebody who is just mentally ill. Which is the most marvelous thing, I think, about the DRA concept and the dual recovery that we're doing in our programs, is that we use the concepts of chemical dependency recovery to treat the mental illness too. And they blend beautifully.
Yeah.
And that's something that the mental health community has not been aware of.
Now, what happens to the spirituality component? In the traditional treatment of chemical dependency, it is known as a spiritual disease. I mean, and that's very important. What happens with this?
Well, I think one of the things we find in our clients who are the more seriously mentally ill, there are all kinds of spirituality, and they're very unique from person to person a lot of times. But it's very simple. It's a matter of being really genuinely interested in that person's specific spirituality, being completely unconditionally accepting and positive towards what they have, and allowing them to take that and make it work. We don't have to squeeze them into this particular 12-step spirituality. We just need to help them find how theirs is going to work with this particular 12-step program. These are the tasks that we're going to do to keep ourselves monitored, keep ourselves on track, keep ourselves reminded of what's important, and keep ourselves sober, keep ourselves taking our medication. How does my particular spirituality or my particular view on life fit into that?
And how are you finding in the mental health segment their shift to accepting the kind of spiritual openness that Ginny's talking about?
It was a bit of a problem at first.
I imagine.
When we started bringing in 12-step work into the centers, there were people who protested. Other mental health providers who said, you know, we can't be speaking, you know, this spiritual approach in mental health programs. And we invited these people to participate. We invited them to join in and see what it was we were talking about, and that we weren't preaching a particular religion or anything, but we were giving people hope and giving them the same chance at having something to hope toward and a feeling that they could get better that other people in the community were having.
So if anybody took the time to just look and see what we were doing, it was very clear and very easy to understand how it worked.
So yeah, if you step aside from the reactivity of what is this God stuff, yeah.
And the positive outcome with the clients that many people had found hopeless has, changed the minds of a lot of providers.
Okay, so it really does speak for itself, doesn't it? Let's take a look at some of the things we can do that I think will be helpful to this area of treatment. Solutions. Well, we could have trained treatment providers who can both identify and accommodate reality of dual diagnosis. We can have acceptance of the need for medication by the 12-step community. Acceptance of spirituality of the 12-step community by mental health providers. So it sounds like so far your dual diagnosis network has made great progress in all three of those areas. We also could use trained sponsors, dual diagnosis recovery groups, sober living environments which can accommodate medication compliance, and more collaboration through your dual diagnosis networks. Now, I'm intrigued by the trained sponsors as a solution. I know that you are starting, you have a program about that.
Well, I did something similar to that years ago, and when you and I talked, it dawned on me, well, now's a good time probably to do that again. And Kathy's always been really interested in that. So what we did is put together an application that said, this is what we want. We want people who want to be sponsors and want to be trained in mental illness. They want to be sponsors specifically for the dually diagnosed. These are the things we want to know about you. And some of the things were...
Well, we of course were interested in their own recovery, in their own experiences of recovery, and their knowledge and understanding of mental illness, their biases, the feelings they might have about medication and things, so that we could see where we're starting with people. But we want people with good recovery and an open mind.
Okay.
So this comes back to the network. Everybody approves the application. We decide how it goes out, who is it going to go out to. Kathy's putting together a training, so these people will have once a month training, or probably in the beginning a little bit more, and then they will be matched up with some of our dual diagnosed clients who really want sponsors.
That is fabulous. Yeah, I know we had talked about that at one point, and I thought I sort of have this vision of that, and it's wonderful to see you actually do
I
it.
thought, oh yeah, let's start that
That's
again.
great.
And once again, this was something that our client population showed us the need for.
Yes. Well, yeah, and it came out of, I know with my clients, some of whom are dually diagnosed, sort of their discomfort sometimes at open 12-step meetings talking about their medication or talking about their mental illness and feeling like that really wasn't okay there.
Which brings us to the Dual Recovery Anonymous meetings.
Yes.
And what would we like to say about that?
Where can we find a dual diagnosis
There are 6
recovery?
or 7 of them.
Oh, well, I
around,
think
aren't there?
currently there are 4 active meetings. There's 2 at the Crestwood facility and Zoe House and Literal House. So 4 days a week there are currently operating dual Recovery Anonymous meetings, which integrate 12-step work with mental health recovery work.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming today to talk about this.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. Come next week as we'll learn the signs of verbal abuse. I'm Mary Crocker Cook. Good night.
For topic suggestions, write to Bay Area Psychology,